We are excited to have two Democratic candidates for SD 19 at our meeting today. If you have a question for the candidates, please write it on the cards that are back there. When you're finished, drop it in the little,
Yeah, it's another basket there.
a little basket back there. If you're on Zoom, please type the question in the chat. As a reminder, we will be recording on Zoom today, and it will be available on the APA website. If you don't want to appear on the video, please contact Taylor or email Taylor. For Zoom participants, please post your questions and comment in the chat. The chat button is on the bottom and looks like a bubble. Click on that and type in your comment, and we will be sure to ask the speakers your question. Are there any first-time people today who would like to introduce yourself and tell us why you came?
My name is Holly Fielding. I came because I learned about this group through Shauna Ambrose's campaign, and I'm really back in Arvada, which is where I grew up. But delighted to see the word progressive associated with the word Arvada.
Well, welcome, Holly. Anyone else?
I'm Allie Nutter, and I came for the candidate forum today, and also was happy to learn of such an organization here nearby home.
Good. Welcome, Allie. Do we have any elected officials or candidates other than the two who will be speaking? Would you like to introduce yourself? Say hi.
Tracy Clapsack, Jefferson County Commissioner. Hello.
Thank you. The speakers, this is Pat Malone. She is our timekeeper. Please pay attention to her so she can tell you how you're doing on time. This group was founded during a very dark period in our country, and we aren't quite out of it yet. We have a tradition of sharing what gives us hope and what keeps us up at night. I'll begin. What gives me hope is watching the all the different trials going on with the guy, and every time they rule against one of his procedures. Anyone else?
Mindy has raised her hand.
Mindy?
Oh, yes, I was just typing in the chat. How will Lindsey know how much time she has if she can't see Pat?
I can type it into the chat.
I also have a timer pulled up on my computer, so I will do my best to track my own time.
Wow, you're great.
I'm trying, yeah.
Yes.
One of the several things that keeps me up at night is the fact that our world is getting mean by the day. And I'm scared of that.
I think a lot of us relate to that. Bruce?
Yeah, one of the things that keeps me up at night is the Democrats becoming conformist and getting behind Biden and not having a real discussion as to who should lead our party, and also with the Gaza. I think that's going to have a negative impact on our chances in 2024.
Yeah.
Bruce is my friend, and I agree with him on most things. But what keeps me up at night is not supporting Biden enough, and or supporting somebody else early enough to make sure we keep the fascists out.
Yeah, it gets a little complicated, doesn't it?
Really?
Yes, Taylor.
So the folks on Zoom cannot hear the people in the audience. So if you'd like to step up, this little device right here is the owl, and that is both our camera and our microphone. So if you want to step up, like say over here by the red chairs, and when you talk, that way we'll be able to hear you, and they can see you too.
Okay, thank you. We collect donations to help pay for this space and our Zoom subscription, website, email, and occasional events. We're going to go pass the basket, and please be generous this holiday season. I would like now to have our team leaders give their action reports. We will start with Allison, if she is available for our communications.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Communication. I am looking for volunteers to help me with the newsletter and updating the website. In the new year, I'd like to do a brand new website. So that's sort of a goal of this year. So if you're interested, please email me, or if you have any experience with email communications or that sort of thing, please get in touch with me. And then I'm also the education team lead, which I think is also next. We had a really busy fall with the candidate forum for school board. And now I'm sort of trying to refocus the education team, and I'm looking for ideas. So look for an email from the education team early this year and trying to brainstorm like what we should focus on for the new year. And if you're interested in joining the education team, again, please just send me an email, contact me on Facebook. I'm available. So
Thank you, Allison. Next we have healthcare, Kathy Blake. Is this good right here?
Gotta
Back
get
a
a
little
little bit farther away. There you go.
Okay, hi, I'm Kathy Blake, APA Healthcare Action Team Leader. Our healthcare system is killing us. Learn how to make it heal us instead. Learn more from a documentary film, Healing US. It's, and there's gonna be 2 opportunities to see this movie. And it has a doctor, it has also, and Susan Sarandon is the, yeah. Anyway, you're invited to a house party on December 8th at 1 o'clock, that's Friday. And another time would be January 13th at Sandy Lake Library. And that will be probably 1 or 1:30. So contact me for the address, Kathy M. Blake for details. So why am I interested in healthcare reform? I have a story about having to fight for the care that I needed after a major car accident. Some of you may have stories of navigating our expensive, complex, broken healthcare system. The January 6th meeting, APA general meeting, which is going to be here same time, and would like you to write down your healthcare story and share it with the group next time. We're also going to have Representative Karen McCormick. She's going to be explaining how her first bill, which is the revamped 1209, will set the stage to improve health care. Senator Jeannie Nicholson will also share actions you can take to help create a statewide, universal, single-payer, private delivery healthcare system. It will improve affordability, access, and quality of healthcare in Colorado. Thank you. Thank you.
Next we have anti-war, Bruce.
Yeah, I'm Bruce Morrison. I'm the head of the anti-war action team. First thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank everybody that has made calls for peace in Gaza. As you know, the bombing has started up again. 15,000 people, including 6,100 children, have been killed. The Senate is now looking to pass the $14 billion aid for Israel, which almost certainly will be used to further the genocide in the Gaza. So thank you for calling. Keep up the calls. We need that. I know that we have a lot of sympathy for Israel because of centuries of anti-Jewish violence and the Holocaust and Hamas attack, but none of that justifies genocide. None of it justifies what they're doing in Gaza. So keep those calls coming. There's a lot of other stuff going on in the world, and as far as anti-war is concerned. Afghanistan has had a major earthquake, and we still have froze the billions of dollars of their money. And there's violence in the Congo and other places, but we're concentrating on Gaza because our government is so involved in that.
Because what, Bruce?
Our government is so involved in that. So we'd love to have anybody that wants to get involved in anti-war to join us, join the discussions. And I do have some cards that, with the info. Anyone?
Thank you, Bruce.
We have links to the call to action in the email that was sent out to the call to action, also on our Facebook page that shows the links to contact your congresspeople.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Taylor. We also have cards in back, just APA cards, if anybody would like to grab one. Environment, Taylor.
Howdy, my name's Taylor. I'm the APA Environment Team Lead. Our email address is APAENVTEAM, all one word, @gmail. One of the things we're looking at here as we head into the new year is to ask what it is that we should be focusing on as we head into the new year. The other thing we should be considering too, probably in our February meeting, we'll be looking for volunteers to step forward to be team leads. So if you either have ideas of what it is you'd like the environment team to be working on, or if you'd like to step up and get more involved, send an email to APAENVTEAM @gmail. As far as our next activity, it will be next Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning at Ralston Central Park. We are assisting with the Alta Vista neighborhood and doing a cleanup. So come wear good boots, wear good gloves, dress up, weather permitting, everything should be fine. What could go wrong?
Thank you, Taylor. Mindy, affordable housing.
Yes, thank you, Julie. I'm Mindy Moore, MOHR, and the Affordable Housing Team. We do not have regular meetings. We just have email discussions on on an as-needed basis. And if you are interested in affordable housing and or homelessness in Jefferson County and specifically in Arvada, please make sure you sign up to get on the Affordable Housing Team. Just a couple of updates and good news. On affordable housing, Arvada, the city, and some developers are applying for funds under Proposition 123. This was passed, it was on the ballot last year. These are competitive dollars, but the developers, for example, for the Marshall Point Apartments, the workforce housing on Marshall Street has applied for $6 million in a low interest loan. And also the city applied for help with land banking, although I'm not sure what property that they are applying for. On the issue of homelessness, Jefferson County is getting its first year-round 24/7 shelter for people. It'll be in Lakewood, not Arvada. The nonprofit Recovery Works got a state grant for over $9 million and also funding from Jefferson County's American Rescue Plan Act funds. They bought a building on Colfax. It used to be an old theater and then was a Harley Davidson store. It's 8,000 West Colfax. It's really big. And what they're going to do is have a full navigation campus there. They'll have services, they'll have day shelter and also night shelter, actual beds and bedrooms for people, year round, not just trying to shuffle them from one church to another or keeping them out on the street. So that's really encouraging. And hopefully someday maybe Arvada will have an actual shelter, not just day shelters. And you probably saw in the Arvada Press that Community Table is getting help from the city to move east near the Sheridan stop on the G line. It's a great location that will not be a day shelter and it will not have overnight beds. And that's the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Political action, Joyce.
Well, I'll just do my part.
Okay.
When we start.
Joyce will be hosting the conversation coming up, so she'll just take it from there. And I am Julie Callahan, Social Connections. Starting in January, we're going to start having a monthly book club. As of right now, the first day will be Wednesday, January 3rd. It's a Wednesday night, 6:30. I expect it'll go an hour to an hour and a half. The book we're going to read is Malcolm Gladwell, How to Speak to Strangers. I'm putting that out now, so you have a month to read it. The week before, I will send out questions so we can talk about it. So when we get together, we'll talk about the book and not talk about our lives. Because book clubs tend to do that. I don't know where it will be, depending on how many people show up. If there's a few people, I will have it at my house. If there's a lot of people, we'll pick an alternate place. Starting in March or April, I want to start organizing to get out the vote for young voters. There's a lot of, I don't know if Jeffco or if Colorado automatically registers people when they turn 18. But one of the things that we've done in the past is we've gone to high schools with cards that talk about getting involved, and democracy is not one day of voting. It's a series of dates, a series of votes, a series of being involved. And I think we will try and do that again. Thank you. Oh, if anybody wants to be part of the book club, you can reach out to me. I'm just have you text me directly. My phone number 720-633-1348. Bruce, if you could put that in the chat, it's 720-633-1348. Thank you.
Could you give that one more time?
720-633-1348. And now I shall pass this off to Joyce. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joyce Richardson, and I'm the chair of the APA Political Action Committee. And if anyone would like to join that committee, I would certainly welcome the help. Next year is going to be one busy year. And one of the big things that we like to do is gather information from candidates, get that posted on our website so that people can make informed decisions. We send out questions to candidates and solicit their response. I spend a lot of time. Hey, you haven't sent that. Hey, you haven't sent that. And sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. But I'd like a few more voices of hey. So that would be great. My email is like right here. And Taylor, if you put that in the chat, I'll hand it to you in a little bit. And again, if you've got a question, please put it on a card and we'll just draw after our two candidates have had a chance to speak. We have two today. Lindsey Daugherty is joining us on Zoom. Ezeadi is here in person. Travel is like that, so I'm glad you could both come in some form or other. Lindsey Daugherty is state representative for House District 24 here in Colorado. Obi is a Westminster City Councilor. This morning, Bruce picked a name out of a bowl, and Lindsey will go first with her 15-minute presentation, and that's how it's going to work. She will present for 15 minutes. Obi will present for 15 minutes about what their accomplishments have been and what their vision for House District or Senate District 19 is. And then we will open it up and answer as many questions as we can from the basket. Each candidate will get to respond and they'll have 2 minutes. So thank you again for being here. And here's our first candidate, Lindsey Daugherty.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Good.
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Well, I apologize for not being there in person. I had a legal conference that I had already scheduled before I knew that this was happening. So I appreciate the opportunity to be remote. And I see so many of you in the room that have helped me in my past campaigns, and you all mean so much to my success that I've had so far. And I wish I was there in person, but I'm sure I'll see you hopefully soon. So I'll just give you a brief background in case you are not familiar with me at all. I'm the current state representative for House District 24. Prior to redistricting, I was House District 29. So this is my second term, fourth year. I've been on multiple committees, including judiciary. We're notorious for having really long hearings till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., but I love the work on that committee. I've also been on appropriations, finance, and this last session was proud to chair the health and insurance committees. I grew up in Colorado, grew up in Loveland. My mom worked at a middle school in Loveland for 21 years. My dad was an engineer, didn't get the math gene, which is why I ended up going to law school. I went out of state for undergrad to play soccer and track, and that's really when I first started being involved in politics. I worked for the Obama campaign when he first ran. I was actually in Iowa for the Iowa caucus, which is an incredible experience back then. And after that, was fortunate enough to have internships in the House, the Senate, and the White House in DC. At the White House, I was a clerk for the Domestic Policy Council, helping specifically in the area of higher education. And that's when I knew I loved policy. So I went to, while I was in law school, knew I eventually wanted to kind of turn to policy instead of practicing law. And that's why I'm so fortunate to be in this position. After law school, however, I did open my own law firm, and I have practiced law the last 10 years, which I think helps immensely in the state legislature in reading bills, interpreting bills, and figuring out how to be the most impactful and write the best legislation that we possibly can. I specifically do mostly juvenile law. So I've been a guardian ad litem, where I represent abused, neglected kids. And I've been doing that for over 10 years. I'm really, really proud of this work. I like to think that the law that I do and the work at the Capitol I do involves standing up for the little guy. In addition to representing abused and neglected kids, I have also done consumer protection work, where I have gone after pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies. Kathy, when you talked about having a car accident, being injured, I know exactly what you're talking about, having dealing with medical bills for a lot of clients and doing that work as well. Some of the issues that are really important to me, obviously, are our youth. I think that if we are able to connect our youth with services at the right time and have the right services for them, we're able to get them out of the cycle of poverty, out of the cycle of abuse, and into a world where they can be productive citizens, which is just so important. And I have seen firsthand in helping these kids that it can be done, but we need to do better and at a bigger scale. I'm also proud to do a lot in the world of mental health and addiction. My brother has a felony. He has a DUI. He has addiction issues, and my family has been with him through multiple rehabs. He's doing great now. But the more I speak about this, the more I realize that this issue touches everyone, no matter, what class you're in, what race you are. And I've really heard from a lot of families who have been going through this issue. I'm proud to be married to an emergency room physician who's dedicated his life to saving people. And as many of you know, I just had a baby boy, Theodore. His name is Theo. He's 5 months. He's still not sleeping through the night, so we're always sleep deprived, but he has the best smile, and being able to watch him see the world through his 5-month-old eyes has given me a new perspective and re-energized my commitment to leave this world in the shape that I would want him to be raised. So I'm really excited to be a new mom. Thank you so much. A lot of you have reached out. I've gotten a hand-sewn quilt from your members. I've gotten meals delivered. So thank you so much. I understand that it truly takes a village to raise children. I wanted to touch on some of the legislation that I've been proud to work on. This last session, I worked on a bill with the Innocence Project, which updated Colorado's post-conviction DNA statute to ensure that wrongfully convicted Coloradans have a fair opportunity to prove their innocence and qualify under the legal standard for testing. Since the original DNA testing statute was passed in 2007, there are only a handful of folks who are exonerated by DNA testing. My bill opened up the legal standard so that folks can now apply and get this testing so that the wrongfully convicted can be exonerated. We heard great testimony from an individual who was wrongfully convicted, and for 20 years, he sat in prison in Colorado. He missed out on his kids' lives, his grandkids' lives. He didn't know how to use a cell phone when he was released. So I'm hoping that we can exonerate those who are wrongfully convicted, and this bill will do that. Additionally, I ran a bill for offenders who are convicted as juveniles to apply to the parole board for reduction in sentencing. I think that everyone truly deserves a second chance, especially when you have juveniles who are convicted of crimes when they were juveniles, have had no core behavior since then. There's a process that goes through parole board and then a program, and then they can apply for early release. The testimony we heard on this bill was amazing. I had a representative who was in there for 6 years tell me that it was the most impactful testimony she's ever heard. We had there was a pilot program of, it was all men that had gone through this program once with the parole board, and they all, every single one of them, there was about 12 of them that came to the hearing to testify. They all made the time, and it was incredible, because we should be helping people with second chances when they deserve it. Speaking of juveniles, my work with our youth, my work with the youth the past 10 years has really given me this perspective on what we can be doing as a society more and more. And I've been able to pass some really impactful legislation. One of the bills I'm most proud of is expanding services and allowing our youth to petition back in after the age of 18 when they lose their services if they have been in the system. I think that the youth that I have represented at the time when they need services the most and they need our help the most, it seems like we give up on them. They lose their housing, their food security, education, all of those things. And this bill expands the length of time for youth to apply for those services. Another area I did in the issue, another issue area I was proud to delve into was allowing our youth to have more say in a courtroom. So instead of the best interest of the child standard, it's now youth directed in court for guardian ad litem such as me. And that gives our youth more of a say when they're younger and teaches them to have more of a say when they're older. So very proud of those bills. As someone who has worked a wide variety of jobs, I've saved up money for law school by working in the service industry at a local grocery store. It's important to me to ensure that workers and consumers have rights. I've worked on a lot of bills in the area of workers' compensation law. I've done just enough to know that the system is really tough for injured workers. I always have unanimous union support for these bills. And throughout these bills, we've extended the timelines for employees to have to tell their employers about on-the-job injuries, expanded benefits for mental health, made the process easier for folks who need medical devices. We've reduced costs for medical examinations. We've allowed for upfront expenses instead of having to wait. And we've increased funeral benefit caps, among a wide host of other things. And I have more work comp legislation in the works for this year as well. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also the current chair of the Health and Insurance Committee, which means I have taken a deep dive into health legislation. As you heard earlier, I like to do people law, but the more I dive into our healthcare system to try to figure out how to fix it, the more I realize it is convoluted, it is scary, it is incredibly expensive, and we need to be doing everything we can for affordable, accessible healthcare for everyone. I have done a lot of transparency laws, which has legislation, which I'm really, really proud of. Essentially, you should be able to know when you are trying to have, especially elective surgery, how much things cost. Having just been pregnant and gone through having a baby and seeing these astronomical health bills that I've been through, I tried to kind of get upfront costs before I had delivered, and it was impossible. So making our system transparent is something that I am so incredibly passionate about, and I will run legislation to continue. And I want to leave you with a story also about one of the best days that I've had in the legislation. I love doing this work. I work really hard for you all. I hope you know that. And this particular day had to do when we were codifying a women's reproductive rights. It was our bill called REA, the Reproductive Health Equity Act. So I don't know if you all followed, but the Republicans love to filibuster. They think they filibustered for about 24-ish hours that day. I like chairing the committee when we're on seconds. And so I think I was either told or volunteered, because I was one of the younger folks in the House, that I had the 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. shift to chair during REA. So sitting up there, very proud to be defending a woman's right to choose. And if a lot of you don't know me, what you will learn is that when I get pushed, I push back. And especially when I'm cheering and the Republicans are up there filibustering, saying all this nonsense, I'm sitting there saying, you know, this isn't within the scope of the title. I need you to stay within the scope of the title. So they're pushing back, they're getting frustrated. Finally, after doing that for, an hour and a half, one of the Republicans goes up there, throws his papers down, screams at his Republican minority leader to deal with me. They run off and they literally belly bump each other. And there is a physical altercation on the floor between the Republicans. And I'm sitting up there and I was sitting up there looking around and I was like, I'm defending a woman's right to choose at 5 a.m. in the morning. And I've kind of like caused this Republican infighting situation. This is amazing. But I tell you that just to know that I'm there to fight for you all. I think my legal background really, really helps me in the legislature. I'm someone that reads every bill. I redline every bill. And I ask questions a lot. And it's not to be a pain or because I don't believe in what the bill represents. It's because I know that as soon as we pass a gun safety bill, that bill will be challenged in the Colorado Supreme Court. And I want these bills that we are passing to withstand constitutional challenges so that we have these changes, much quicker than if they don't, we have to start back from a blank slate. So I do bring that to the table. Like I said, I ask a lot of questions, but I am so, so proud to do this work. I have been honored to be there in the legislature. I hope that you all look at all of my legislation on my website. It's www.lindseyforcolorado.com. I believe that I would be able to jump into this Senate district seat knowing exactly how to be the most effective at the legislature, because I have done this work for the past 3 years and it takes a while to get acclimated and to really be impactful. And from day one, I would get in there, I would fight for you all as I have been doing my last 3 years and try to make things better as a practicing attorney, reading the legislation, reading the bills, and really listening to the constituents and what Arvada needs. So I will stop there. Thank you so much. I look forward to the questions. And like I said, please reach out anytime. Happy to have a conversation with you about what actually happens at the Capitol, but also love for you all to come and visit me. Thanks.
Hey, thank you very much, Representative Daugherty. And now we will hear from Councilor Ezeadi.
Thank you. Can you all hear me online?
Yes,
All right,
yes, we can.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ezeadi. Thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite groups. I know many of you, most of you, I've shown up to these meetings a lot in the last couple of years, and it's been a pleasure to know you. So I wanted to start there and just say thank you. Who am I? Well, you just heard an amazing background, right, from our Representative Lindsey Daugherty and what she's done with kids of disadvantaged situations. I was one of those kids. Growing up, I grew up in poverty. I grew up with food insecurity, housing insecurity. So when I was 10 years old, I walked to school. On my walk to school, I was brutalized by police on my walk so I can tell you the story real quick if it matters to you, but I'm walking to school, 2 cop cars jackknife onto the sidewalk. One shoved me down to the ground. So I'm a scrawny little tiny kid. Okay, I'm still scrawny now, I guess. I wasn't resisting, but the one guy had my face, pushed me down to the ground, kept smushing my face with pressure, right? The other one took my book back, threw my textbooks all over the street. And then, a semicircle starts to form. And the community starts saying, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? 2 minutes go by. One of them finally says, well, we had a phone call that a kid wearing red gloves, I had red gloves on, had a gun in his book bag. And no one believed this story. They left after that. No, they didn't pick up my stuff. They didn't pick me up. As folks picked me up and started to talk to me, they said, "Oh, don't worry, Obi, this happened to my cousin last week. That happened to my sister 2 weeks ago." It was a very normalized action. And going through that moment, that was the first moment when I realized something was wrong with society, right? Something was broken. I turned inward after that. I started studying history, government, society. I was already an introvert as a kid because growing up in that situation is obviously very traumatic. And I was always ridiculed as a child. I was never in groups, the social groups. But this really kind of cut me off from society in a way that I didn't expect to at the time. But I started reading a lot about why things work the way they do. Fast forward, I saw my mother. So my mother was a public school teacher. And she did the best that she could, right? So I'm first generation American. I was born in Nebraska. I grew up in New Jersey. And the rest of my family, they were all born and raised in Nigeria. So, but it was me and my mom growing up for most of my childhood until my family started coming over one by one, right, through the immigration process. And just watching her journey, she took us, so she started a daycare center in our tiny little living room. So imagine that. So I'm coming home from school and I see 2 kids, right? Then it's 4 kids. And it grew to 8 kids, then 10 kids, and it kept growing. And I watched her journey towards self-sufficiency. She leased a building after that, right? In a different city. She got us to move. Her business that she started enabled us to move from where we were to a better city, right? So my high school years were better than my college years. So I just kept climbing out of poverty through this journey that I saw her go through. And in college, that was kind of my second moment when I realized the world was much bigger than where I came from, right? Because I went to Rutgers University. It's a public school, international school, and I learned about different cultures. I saw white people for the first time in my life at college, and they saw me for the first time. Some came from cities and just going through that, I learned about the diversity of our society. And it's much, much more than race, right? There's a diversity that we don't talk about enough, the ideological diversity. I met people from different backgrounds and political ideologies. I met people from different sexual orientations, right? And I learned from that. I learned from folks with disabilities and what they're going through. So my whole world view was changed in that moment. I studied psychology. My first passion or love was to be a psychiatrist. And you can see why now, right? I didn't really know why at the time, but unpacking it with my therapist, we realized that, I was just trying to understand why people behave the way they do. Why do they think the way they do? Because of my traumas that I went through as a child. The more I studied psychiatry, though, and the more I went through that program, so I took the entire pre-med program, I realized that it was mostly script writing, prescription, less therapy. And what I wanted was really to deal on the therapy side, right? So I transitioned to business because of my mother's journey. That had always stuck with me. And I went back to school. I did my MBA in finance and marketing. And that was one of the greatest things that I could have done, because what I realized was when you have lived experience of going through economic insecurity and seeing what real working class people have gone through, what you need then is the other side of the coin. You need to also have that professional experience to give you the solutions to help those folks that need help right now. So when I went through my MBA, after I graduated, I went through 15 years of professional leadership. So I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in housing, I've worked in transportation, and I've worked in technology. I am professionally certified in strategic planning. I'm certified in financial management and project management. And all of that is to say that I gained an experience that I could never have gained where I came from. And I think that everyone deserves the opportunity from an education standpoint and opportunity standpoint to build a life for themselves, to become self-sufficient, to have equal opportunity to build wealth for themselves. So I learned a lot of problem solving and solution gaining in that professional realm. After that, though, I wanted to start my own business, right? That's the natural progression. And I started my own business. I've started several businesses. I failed in many, succeeded in some. And that gave me the experience of the entrepreneur, the experience of, okay, there is economic opportunity that exists. But I realized because of my background that not everyone has this opportunity. How can we build that? How can we generate economic stimulus, stimulate the economy for everyone? Because right now, as you see, Colorado is one of the best, we have one of the greatest economies in the country. But do you raise your hand if you feel it? If you feel like you are in an economic secure state, raise your hand. Okay, about 35% of the audience feel secure. And this is probably the top 3, I think, economic states in the country. The problem is distribution, right? The problem is stagnant wages. The problem is our educational system. Tabor, for example, is a problem. We're not able to use all of the wealth that we built to help everyone. It's not a fair distribution. And I'm not saying we need to redistribute wealth. What I'm saying is we need to give everyone the opportunity to get that for themselves, to own a home, for example, right? To work in a job that actually progresses them wage-wise. To get the opportunity to have your kids get an education that's holistic, that's not just based off of a test, but based off of financial literacy, mental health, behavioral health, right? That teaches them how to become productive citizens of the state. So there are a lot of issues in this state, and I've gone through a lifetime of trying to understand and figure out what to do about it. My political career started when the world ended. So during the pandemic, the COVID lockdown, that's when I started to realize that I felt like I had lost my identity. I went through this life of ups and downs, right? And I had done what I wanted to do, but I didn't feel like I was doing enough. And I realized that all of those gaps, those struggles throughout my life could be tied to a policy gap. Whether it's food insecurity or housing or whatever I went through in my life, the jobs that I worked at before I got to better jobs, the low income, bad benefits, all of those could be tied to policy gaps. But I didn't know what to do about it until the night of the insurrection. So January 6th, 2021, that night, we all realized that we need more leaders in the world, right? But I realized that, policy, although that has shaped my life, my goal, my purpose in life is to actually use my lived experience to shape policy. And that's when I looked at city council and I saw the disproportionate representation in city council in Westminster. I saw that we had a water rate issue, a water battle, as Arvada is about to have, right? With raising rates or not raising rates to build a new water treatment plant. And I knew that my background and my professional background and my lived experience could actually add a lot of value to that conversation. So I ran, we won, and since then what I've done is try to bring forth a governance that is different than what people are used to. It's a participatory governance. I've activated the community throughout my time on council because my whole goal on council and in government is to represent you, is to actually not just tell you what legislation I'm working on, but bring you in, right? Lift the veil. I've informed my residents for 2-3 years as to what I'm doing, as to how things work, how government works, how city council works, what I'm working on next. I've reached out to most of you in here to learn about Arvada, right? Throughout the time I've been on council in Westminster. And I've learned about your issues and what's happening in Arvada and how I can help. I've been a community activist in this area for years. And I say all this to say that a vote for me, supporting me is more than just policy alignment. It's a commitment to participatory government, to actually having a voice, to knowing that I will be there, I will show up, I will be your voice. And I can talk about some things I've done on city council since I've been in office. The main thing, the number one thing that I'm most proud of is the approval of the water treatment plant, right? So 2 years ago, we had a 5-2 Republican council. When I got in, at the time, the sentiment, the majority was, we don't need a new plant. Even though we did a tour, right? I kind of forced the tour. We all went and we saw that there's cracks. It's running on 1960s technology. It's breaking down. It's very close to Flint, Michigan levels. If the Marshall fires that happened that December, so 1 month after the Marshall fires occurred, if that had reached Westminster, the whole city would have gone up in flames because our homes are so close together. And we didn't have a really good emergency preparedness plan at the time. We do now. But Stanley Lake, if that had been contaminated, the Semper water treatment plant would not have been able to provide clean water to the city because it's running on 1960 technology. So what I did was worked with the community, worked with my council, worked with colleagues. We had a new consultant come in. Over time, the sentiment changed. So 4 or 5 months ago, I think it was May this year, we finally approved the new plant, and it's going to be built by 2028. That's the number one thing because that's going to ensure clean water for generations. I've also been a spearhead for mental health services for a fire department. We've approved thousands of units of housing. We've increased police salary and retention because, as you know, especially for this whole area, our police departments don't have enough staff. And safety has gone down. So car thefts have gone up, safety has gone down. The big reason is the retention. So we've actually increased a lot of public safety. We've increased fire department safety. We've fixed our roads. We made the largest investments in our roads in 3 years. So thank you for listening, and I please would love your vote and your support. And I also want to thank so many of you in here are already on Team Obi, and I thank you for that, and I thank you for the help that you've been doing so far. It's going to be a long road, but thank you.
I just have to get a hold of the questions now. Are there any questions in the chat from?
No, not right now.
Oh, okay. Then I'm just gonna run back and get the back. I'm gonna walk.
And my website is voteob.com. Thank you.
Couple these up.
And we're 10 minutes ahead of schedule, so.
Okay. All right, first question, and each candidate will get to answer, and I'll start with the OB because we started with Lindsey last time. And we'll alternate. So here it is. Would you make sure that shelters for homeless people are working, and ideas about how you would make that happen?
Yes, absolutely. And on city council in Westminster, I was one of the leaders who ensured that we hired a new homeless navigator. So a homeless navigator is someone who kind of sits in the middle. They connect the unhoused with services, like mental health services, jobs, housing. That's important because they're the front line. And so in Westminster, we have 2. And to me, the issue of homelessness is really that it comes down to housing, right? Housing is actually intersectional with that with healthcare, with education. And I think to actually solve this national issue of homelessness, because it is a national issue, we need to work regionally. It can't just be Arvada and Westminster doing their own thing and other cities are not. We actually need to work with our regional neighbors and make sure that we have solutions, housing solutions that can take care. And we need to make sure that we have job placement and training, because it's actually not enough to put someone who is unhoused in a home. You need to make sure that they're self-sufficient, right? Going back to what I was talking about. We need to make sure they have jobs, that they're well trained, that they understand how their finances work, right? How to manage a budget. All of those things are really important to make sure that they don't just revert back to being homeless. So that would be a priority of mine, and housing is a big priority of mine. I believe we need to diversify our housing stock. We need townhomes, we need condos. We need to make sure that we do more than $600,000 single family homes, right? Because that doesn't help anyone. Affordable housing is key, but also sustainable self-sufficiency is also key.
Okay. Representative Daugherty?
Thank you so much. Yes. Growing up in Colorado, I know a lot of you all have also grown up in Colorado, but we went from housing prices, being astronomical and something that no one can afford now. I've talked to a lot of you about your kids and the problems that they're having with housing. I was a renter until just a few years ago because we couldn't afford to get into a house, which is, really, really tragic. And it trickles down to every person out there trying to look for housing. With the homeless issues, we've done a lot at the state legislature to try from all angles to look at this, to look at why people are experiencing homelessness and how to help them. As I mentioned before, my background is in youth and providing services and connecting youth to services when we need it the most, so that they can help themselves, so that they have access to education, they have access to housing. I mentioned that bill earlier where we increased services from 18 to 24. I'd love to increase them even more. It's tough when we're working, in a state with Tabor, but we are doing what we can at the legislature to do everything we can to get people into housing. Also, for folks, as you'll see in the special session, one of the bills that we ran was to keep people in housing so that they're able to apply for grants and loans, and they aren't kicked out of where they're living in the first place. Because we know if we can get people their rent for a month or two and keep them in housing, then they are able to catch up and not be unhoused in the first place. 2 minutes goes fast. I will stop there. I have so much more to say.
All right. Again, I guess this is, I think some of this was answered, so. The question is, why do you want to go to the Senate, and what would you be able to do there that you are not already able to do? And I'll turn it over to Lindsey first on this one.
Okay, great. As I mentioned in my introduction, I believe that if I were elected as your state senator, I would be able to get in there from day one and be impactful on a larger level. There are a lot more people in the Senate district than in the House district. And your vote matters more numerically in the Senate. I believe that I would be able to continue legislation that I've been working on in the House to the Senate and just be more impactful for even more people. I've worked a lot with constituents on legislation and taken ideas. I've worked with young people. I ran the suicide prevention and postvention bill with high school students, creating a grant program, because what we found was that high school students really want peer-to-peer training as opposed to adults telling them how to feel when they're suffering from mental health issues. I've done a lot of talks with the Boy Scouts, the Jeffco Young Dems. I've gotten them at the Capitol because I think it's so important for people to do what they can to be involved in this process. And I'm telling you, even as an attorney going into my first session, it is unlike anything I ever could have imagined how bills are made. And I think the more people know the process, the more that you all can come in, be a voice that I can advocate for at the Capitol. I also do an HD 24 day where I bring folks in. So I've been really trying. I've been reaching out to high school students, everything we can to bring folks from the district in to the Capitol, and so that I can help you advocate for yourselves and so that I can be a better advocate for you as well.
The reason why I would like to move to the state senate is because there are so many things I cannot do at a city council level related to economic security and education. Education is going to be my biggest priority, making sure that we fully fund our schools, our public schools, making sure that we get mental health specialists in every school is going to be a priority of mine, making sure that folks from a wage standpoint are able to thrive. I can't tell you how many folks call me every week and say, Obi, someone just stole my car. I can't afford it. I'm working this minimum wage job, 3 minimum wage jobs. I don't, they're underwater. And I tell them, well, let me see what I can do. Can I connect you with someone at the state capitol? There are so many roadblocks that I can't do legislatively that I would love to do at the city level, but I can't, some roles are not for the city. And believe me, I've stretched it, okay? I've pushed a lot of human services in Westminster that was never there before. And we're doing things that we've never done as a city before, but there's so much more that I could be doing at the state level. And that's why I'm doing it.
Okay, this one's a long one, so listen carefully. The background is gig workers like Uber and Lyft drivers have seen their fares or what they are paid drop over the last few years. These drivers are given very little information on the rides they accept, and as independent contractors have very little to say in the work that they do. Would you support legislation that requires these app companies to be transparent with their drivers and share more data so drivers can make the best decisions and be protected? And I realize this is kind of a yes or no question, but if you can elaborate a little bit, that would be great. And I've already lost track. Who did I call on first? Okay. Councilor Ezeadi, and I'm sorry I mispronounced your name before.
Absolutely. You can't manage what you can't measure, right? Data transparency is always the first step. And I think we need to make sure that we take care of not just gig workers, but all workers. We have a lot of union jobs that need help, right? A lot of low wage jobs that need help, but there are opportunities out there that are available and we need to connect them with that. But the first step is definitely measuring, because we can't manage what we can't measure.
Okay. Representative Daugherty?
Yes. We actually had some legislation that had to do with gig workers last session by Representative Vigil, I believe, who was an Uber and Lyft driver. So she had that unique perspective. Unfortunately, it never got to the House. It didn't make it through the Senate. So we were unable to work on that specific issue. I think I've heard that she's bringing something similar up as well. But I am all about transparency. I think you heard earlier, I talked about transparency in healthcare. I think transparency is wonderful in all policy areas. I think what I was able to do with some of my bills on transparency in healthcare I would absolutely support if we expanded that to other areas. As you know, I also have done a ton for workers' rights. Like I said, I always have union support for these bills. And I am really proud of the way that we have started to transform the workers' compensation legislation in the state of Colorado. Prior to me coming in, there hadn't been a lot of work comp bills. I've been changing that. I've been running at least one bill protecting injured workers a session, and I continue to do that, as well as my transparency bills across the board. So short answer is yes, I do always, I got great advice once where I have to always read a bill before I support the legislation. So I will read it, I will redline it, but that policy idea is something that I support. Thanks.
And now we have some from Zoom.
All right, this is from Mindy and Affordable Housing. During her years in the state Senate, Rachel Zenzinger has been a strong advocate for increasing affordable housing in Colorado. She has served on the board for the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, CHFA, and was active in the Affordable Housing Transformational Committee, created for using ARPA funds, and she has sponsored and actively worked for a number of affordable housing bills at the state. Please discuss any actions you have taken in your current elected offices to make housing more affordable in either Westminster or in the state, and what your plans are for housing affordability if elected to Senate District 19.
Okay. And it's Representative Lindsey first this time.
All right, thank you. I'm committed to addressing housing challenges through policies and legislation that promote affordability and availability. As I said, having grown up in Colorado, I have seen the state change dramatically. Whether it's housing, the environment, being able to get to the mountains on a Friday, I've been there. I'm proud to have supported legislation in the House that includes pushing for increased funding for affordable housing development, supporting renters' rights. Like I said, I have been a renter recently, promoting innovative housing solutions and addressing zoning laws, which are fascinating. I've taken a deep dive into zoning laws as well, and the history behind zoning. Just a few laws that I can think of off the top of my head that I was very supportive of was a bill that expanded property tax exemptions for nonprofit housing developers to build up Colorado's affordable housing stock, which I think is so important because we need affordable housing, but we need people to build affordable housing. That's how we get it. I've also been supportive of a bill tackling Colorado's housing crisis, requiring that local governments be able to maintain existing affordable housing options so families are not priced out of their communities. Again, that's so important. I hear this all the time from younger people trying to find houses in Arvada. We recently, I'm sure you all heard about the land use bill. That was really, really contentious. That was one of those things where I really looked at my responses from my constituents on how to vote, because I realized at the Capitol, it's not about how I vote, it's about how you all represent and want me to vote for you. So happy to have supported all of those. If you go to my website, again, it's hard to talk about all these bills in the few minutes I have, but we have a lot of other bills I've supported on this issue that you can kind of take a further look into.
Okay, thank you. And do you have another one that you want to read?
Oh,
sorry. I've been doing a terrible job today. Sorry.
I'm just right here, Joyce. I'm just, municipalities control zoning, right? And I think that's why it's critical to have someone who, like our state senator, Rachel Zenzinger, who came from city council, to be in that seat in the state senate. Because we understand zoning and we understand affordable housing and the needs for it. It's been a critical issue for me on city council in Westminster. It's, we started a new fund called the Housing Lift Program. That's in $1 million to help preserve affordable housing units for nonprofits. We've pushed, so we're redefining and reevaluating a new housing needs assessment for Westminster, which will be done this month. That housing needs assessment will determine our current state of housing stock, what do we need, supply, demand, etc., which then we'll use and dive into 123, just for Prop 123. We're going to definitely be applying for more of that funding once we understand the current state. But we know it's no secret, affordable housing is the key. It's the key to it all. You'll hear me on city council meetings asking developers how much affordable housing will this have, and if they don't say enough, you'll hear me pushing back very hard, and that's a constant replay at city council in Westminster. And I think that's what we need to do as cities. We need to make sure that, it's not just a state senate issue. It's a municipal issue. It's a translation of state policy into local law. And we need to make sure that we all work together and advocate together across from the House to the Senate, but also from the Capitol to the city, because the cities with local control and how home rule works, right? In Colorado, nothing gets done if the city says no, right? So it's important that all levels of government work together.
All right, so this question is also from the Zoom audience. This is from Karen Tonso. If elected to the Senate, how would you continue the extraordinary track record that has been a hallmark of Senator Zenzinger's communication with her constituents?
You get to go first.
Thank you for recognizing. Awesome. Our state senator has done an incredible job at communication. I think we all know that. One of the hallmarks of my time at city council has been my communication. I communicate with residents every day in all channels, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, social media, but even offline. When I first got elected to city council, I never stopped door knocking. I continued door knocking every month. I did about 10 houses a weekend and just went to random residents and said, how are you? What's happening in your life, right? I think that level of online and offline engagement is what's needed at the state level. And we need to continue what Senator Zenzinger has done for all of us at that communication level. And I worked for her, right? For 3 months, I worked in Rachel's office and I saw firsthand how great that team is. And I think the continuation of that, I'm ready from day one to continue that and to really enhance and engage with you all. Like I said before, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And I'm here to really represent you. You will be in the room with me. We will build legislation together. And it's going to be a different way of doing it, but trust me, I think you all love it.
Representative Daugherty?
Yes, thank you. We have my office has done a really, it's been important for us, every constituent response we get to respond in a timely manner. We had a lot of people needing help throughout COVID, which was right when I was elected, essentially. And I think the state really had to step up the resources that it had. And we really had to figure out how to get folks to know about those resources. So I read every constituent question we get. We try and match folks up with the services whenever we can, because like I said, what I realized in this job is it's tough. There's a lot of services out there, and figuring out how to match folks up has been a challenge sometimes when folks don't know where those services are or how to get them. I think if you look at my website, we've done also another really good job of putting services on there for folks. So we direct people to that a lot. I think everyone knows my cell phone number. If you don't, it's someone you're sitting next to has it. I make it a point to give people my cell phone. I think I'm accessible. Every time I run for office, we've been in a really tough district and we have knocked thousands and thousands of doors. And so going to the door is really important, as well as, folks just getting in, like I said, just getting in touch with me, coming to the Capitol. I know a lot of the members, you all have been to the Capitol, which has been great. I get a card sent in and I come out and here's a group of you advocating for healthcare. And I've taken meetings with you in my offices as well. So I will try to do as much as I can to be accessible. I think it's so incredibly important to hear your voices, and that will not change when I am a state senator.
Okay, I'm gonna take one from here now. How can we address gun violence when politicians are afraid to confront the gun enthusiasts over automatic high caliber weapons? And what is the path forward? And Representative Daugherty, you're first this time.
Great. I think, like I said in my opening, I've grown up in Colorado. I was here when Columbine happened and remember it. I remember every minute of that day. I'm also on judiciary and we get all of the gun bills. I hear all of them as a member of judiciary. They typically only put attorneys on judiciary because of the type of bills that we get. There was, I'm assuming that you're talking about the assault weapon ban that went through the legislature this year. I was a yes vote on that. Unfortunately, that did not make it through the House. I work a lot with the Giffords folks. I actually worked with them and got to know them when I was in Washington, D.C. And I take a lot of advice from them as far as gun legislation. I know that the legislature would love to pass an assault weapons ban. I'm one of those people. I support that. I think given the current Supreme Court decisions, I was actually just looking at this. It's tough on how you actually define assault weapon. And the law that we pass in Colorado has to be done very carefully so that it withstands constitutional scrutiny. That's one of the reasons that I think it's helpful that you have attorneys there looking at these things, because, as soon as that is passed, that the Republicans will file something in court and they will try their best to make sure that that doesn't become law. And we need to all of the time make sure we are passing constitutional laws out of the legislature. And that's one of the biggest problems we have right now with the assault weapon ban, but we are working on it.
Councilor Ezeadi.
I think there is a fear. It feels like a fear from politicians to talk about gun violence. I don't understand it. I guess I do understand it as a self-preservation there, but I talk about it in city council. So Westminster, with Democratic councils in the past, we had never passed a gun violence proclamation. Just a simple proclamation that says gun violence is bad. 2 years ago, in my first year, I negotiated with the most conservative on my council. I represented Moms Demand and families and advocates for gun control, and he represented his folks. And we went through 20-something versions of a proclamation. We landed on one. We got the council to agree, unanimous vote. It was the first time it ever happened. And that shocked me because we have had some Democratic councils in the past, but we never were able to pass this thing, and we passed it. So it's a little story. It's a tiny blip in the arc of change, right? For making sure that we can do something about gun violence, but it's representative of the state as well. I think that there are lots of things we could do at the state level. One of the things that I'm planning on working on is making sure we have gun safes, free gun safes. So I'm not sure if you heard of that program that was started about a year ago. It was a small program, it was funded, small amount of funding. It was very successful. I'd like to expand that and make sure that we can actually provide free gun safes, because it's, again, it's a one little blip on the arc, but it's something we need to continue moving forward with that.
All right, thank you. We'll take one from Zoom.
We got, this one is from Allison Phipps and the education team. Senator Zenzinger has been an advocate for public school funding and has served on the Education Committee. While in office, she co-sponsored Senate Bill 23-287 Public School Finance Bill that was passed into law. This law increases the statewide base per pupil funding for the 2023-2024 budget year by almost $600 and repeals the budget stabilization factor. What have you done to support public education in the past, and what will you do to support public education if elected as state senator?
Okay, Counselor Ezeadi, you go first.
So, and this is one of those examples that I mentioned as to what I cannot do as city council, right? But even in my role at city council, I've helped advance public education in many different ways. So I sit on the board of a few nonprofits that all deal with youth, education, and ensuring that families have the economic security that they need in that context of education. ACPAC, Colorado Young Leaders, etc. And what I've done in that realm is I've helped not only elevate those nonprofits in the eyes of legislators, right, from a funding standpoint, but I've also worked behind the scenes on many bills in the last 2 years related to education. I've in city council, I've actually met with, worked with, and advocated for our school districts. So Westminster has several school districts within the city, and I've worked with them over time to make sure that they have what they need, and if they don't, then I connect them, right, with the right resources. That's not my role as a city councilor to do, but I went above and beyond because education is very important to me, and making sure that the intersectionality of education with housing and healthcare, right, remains in the forefront of Coloradan legislators. And that's important, that we continue to move forward and towards fully funding our public schools. That's going to be number one. If it doesn't happen this next session, it will happen in my session. I guarantee it. So that's what I've done, and that's what I will continue to do.
Representative Daugherty.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I grew up in Loveland, went through public schools. My mom worked in a school for 21 years. My grandma was a public school teacher. My cousin just graduated with her teaching degree. Instead of staying in Colorado to teach, she moved to Wyoming. It's not that far away. They get paid a lot more. We are losing teachers right and left. We need to do everything we can to keep them. I have a strong voting record. If you look at the bills I've supported and the bills that I've been able to work on during my time in the state legislature. We've increased funding for special education. We have raised teacher pay. We have boosted stipends for new teachers. We have established universal full-day preschool. Having a 5-month-old and trying to figure out childcare has been incredibly difficult. My husband and I both, when I start session, our schedules are very, very long days. I don't know when I'll come home, if I'll come home some nights, because of how long the Republicans like to talk. And so, those sorts of things, getting kids into school through preschool, raising teacher pay, making sure that we're doing all we can for our students in mental health. I truly believe in my work as a juvenile attorney that we need to focus on kids and their education. That means having good teachers, retaining good teachers, and doing everything we can. And along with the restrictions of Tabor, making sure that we're funding as much as possible our education system. I have an excellent session on section on my website on all of the educational bills I've supported. Please go there and read more.
I'm going to do one more, or is there one on?
I surrender.
Okay, I'm going to edit this one just a little bit so that it fits both. How do you plan to support unions as a senator? And Representative Daugherty, you go first.
Yes, I am a strong believer in unions. It's one of the core reasons I'm a Democrat, to be quite honest. I am very excited in this race to already have the endorsements of the pipe fitters, the plumbers, and the firefighters. I have gone to bat at the Capitol, and with my voting record, I have done everything I can when we have bills and they have issues in these bills to help support unions. I believe strongly that we should grow our union membership. I think when you're looking at the balance of power, you need the workers to have more power to equalize what's currently happening. This is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about all the workers' compensation laws that I keep mentioning. It's because I work with the unions on these pieces of legislation, because we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect our injured workers. And there's so much more to do in that realm. I have battled Pinnacle and won at the Capitol multiple times. And I will continue to do that. I will continue to be there for unions. I have had their support in every one of my races, and I'm proud to have their support in this race. And I think that's because they look at my track record and I put my money where my mouth is.
Unions built the middle class. Do we all agree with that? Yeah. They supported me throughout my city council campaign. Many will be supporting me in this Senate campaign when their process starts for endorsement. The Westminster firefighters, for example, I've done so much for them that they're just so excited, right? Because they know my track record, they know that I fought for them, they know that the bills that I've worked on for them on their behalf have benefited them. They know that there's so much more that I can't do at the city council that I am itching to do at the state senate level. I have union support. Many of you are in unions in this room. Woo. Yeah, woo, right? You're supporting me. Why? Because you know that I'm your guy. You know that I'm here to represent the working class. I come from the working class. Working class needs representation. Working class is the voice, should be the voice that's in the Senate. We just talked about education. I've said this a lot, but we need more teachers in office. We need more police officers in office. We need more firefighters in office. We need folks who have been at the front lines. We need unions. Folks like Allie, right? With union experience in office. Because that's how you change legislation. That's how you change lives, is when you have lived experience. You understand the urgency of what working families are going through. You understand that folks are working 2-3 jobs with low wages. And that's why unions support me, and that's why I'm excited to support them.
Thank you. Is there another Zoom question?
Do we have time for one more from your parents?
Pardon?
Do we have time for one more from you?
I think we do, but
It's 5:25.
Oh, it's 5:25?
It's 5:25.
Okay, all right, all right. Hearing it. The need for. Which brings us to this question. Okay. What have you done in the past and will do in the future to support efforts to implement a statewide, universal, single-payer, privately delivered healthcare system, which would improve affordability, access, and quality of Colorado's healthcare? And I think you go first.
Right.
Healthcare is important. As we know, there's 12% of Coloradans right now have medical debt. 12% of all Coloradans are in medical debt. Medical debt has interest, right? It builds up. It's similar to student debt, except we can actually do something about it. One of the first things I'm going to do in office is work with a nonprofit called, get their name now. I think they're called No More Debt. Is the name of it? They're national. They've worked with cities and states in different areas. And what they do is they purchase debt. So the provider sells the debt to collector, to a debt collector for pennies on the dollar. This company buys that debt for a few more pennies on the dollar, right? But what that does is it exonerates and so your debt's gone automatically, and the city or the state will get to pay off your debt for pennies on the dollar. It's what's happening. So right now in Denver, they're looking to do something like this. This has been done in many cities like Toledo and some states. California is looking into this. That's one thing I think we can do right away is get rid of this burden. It's a big burden on people's backs, medical debt. But from a healthcare standpoint, we need to think about care more holistically. I'm a big advocate for elder care, right? Child care. Making sure that from a healthcare standpoint, we need to think big, and universal healthcare needs to be the direction that we go to. But how do we get there? We take bites of the elephant, right? There are lots of steps on the way towards universal healthcare that we need to do. And that's my vision, is to make sure everyone has accessible, affordable healthcare. But then we need to also be holistic about it and look at our aging population. My time is up, but that's all I gotta say. I said it.
Representative Daugherty?
Yes, I was a supporter of the bill that you're talking about. I also mentioned that you all came to lobby at the Capitol for. That bill made it through the House. Unfortunately, it didn't make it through the Senate. But I would love to talk with you and know what your steps are for that bill that you ran last year, and if you have any, if you plan on running something like that again, I'd love to know. Regarding healthcare, like I said, I am the chair of the Health and Insurance Committee, so I get a lot of the bills that come through that have to do with healthcare. They're all over the board. And like I said, healthcare, the more I've dug in, the more I realize how convoluted, inaccessible, not transparent it is, which is why I have started running some of these transparency bills. I supported a bill last year removing medical debt from credit reports. I've supported, I ran a bill, if anyone knows what pharmacy benefit managers are, PBMs. Essentially, what I did is I prohibited spread pricing so that they can't keep making money off of employers based on the spread price of then charging more than they're receiving. So we prohibited that. That was a huge fight at the Capitol. That was actually one of the Gov's priority bills. I'm happy to do that. Like I said, we're looking into even more transparency bills for next year, and hopefully some of those will come to fruition. But I am always in this to make sure that we are providing affordable, accessible healthcare for folks. You can look at my track record. Again, we've got a good section on my website on healthcare as well. I would love for you to come see a committee that I'm chairing and come hear some of the testimony on the healthcare bills. It's fascinating. So I'd also invite you to do that as well.
We have hit the 5:30 witching hour, and I really appreciate both candidates being here. And sorry, I keep getting miscombobulated about who goes first and who goes second, but thank you all for coming, and it's going to be interesting in 2024.